Hello, my name is Lisa Fabiano, and I'm here at Art Gallery in May to talk a little bit about my exhibit called Merge. And first, I want to say thanks to Abby and Gundi for this opportunity to talk about my work and to show my work. For those who don't know, I've been an oil painter for over 25 years now, and my main focus has been abstract expressionism. But over the past few years, with all the changes in the world and the changes in my personal life, uh, I found that my artwork was changing and I was attracted to different types of work other than abstract expressionism. Um, but the main focus of my work has always been color and abstraction, and even though my style and the things I'm attracted to has changed, my focus is still color and abstraction, and particularly modern abstraction. But I'll talk about the different influences in this work as opposed to the ABEX work that I did for 25 years. A few years ago, I found myself more attracted to geometry and patterns and textile art. And the last exhibit I had here in 2022 is just the beginning of my attraction to textile art. And I was kind of just forming how that was going to affect my work. But it's been a couple years since then, and I incurred a few other important interests. And one is particularly weaving of the Southwest, the Navajo, and also Japanese culture. Those are two big interests I have, and that's even aside from art, but that has affected my artwork and my style. In the Navajo weaving, I am interested more than in just the graphics of the weaving. I'm interested in the culture also, but I don't feel informed enough to speak about that part. Only the graphics of the Navajo weaving is what I'm going to talk a little bit about. Mostly the motifs in the Navajo weaving, which is the stripes and the diamonds and the bands, those kind of graphic elements. And I really can't explain what it is about those simple forms that attracts me so strongly. But when I look at Navajo weavings, and I'm talking about looking in books, I got a great book from University of New Mexico about Southwest weaving, and that's where I saw hundreds of images. And there's something about the stripes is more than a stripe, but it just speaks to me. So also the Japanese culture interest, I started watching a lot of Japanese vlogs during COVID and after COVID, and learning about different parts of Japan and their textiles and their elements of design. So all those things influenced me. I wanted to simplify my own work. I wanted to make it more simple in color, in graphics. I didn't want to have a lot of abstract expressionist mark making. It didn't seem to fit what I enjoyed anymore. So that was a beginning of changing my style for this exhibit. It wasn't necessarily conscious, it just evolved. Also, what important was becoming more important to me was using materials I had and simplifying my process. I'm using materials on hand, and I had come upon two large paper sample books a few years ago, and I'd been carrying them around from studio to studio. And they were beautiful papers, and they were eco-friendly, sustainably produced. It said that on the back of the samples, and I decided it was time to use those. So I took them all out of the sample books and I painted them all. I ended up with 144 painted pieces of paper. I painted some with patterns, but most of them were just color washes or just straight color. So I had a palette of 144 colored papers, and I started out wanting to collage them. And as soon as I started experimenting with collage, I realized how that process of collage was so similar to quilt making. And I grew up in Pennsylvania, where quilt making historically has been an activity for women since they've been there, and I would say early 1700s forward. So I started with the collage, but there were so many possibilities. I had to limit myself so I didn't get overwhelmed by the possibilities. I decided, since I so admired the Navajo work and the Japanese work, I limited myself to squares and rectangles and triangles. There's one exception I'll talk about in a minute, but other than that, that freed me up to just focus on the color and the careful placement, which is an aspect of Japanese design that is the main component of this work, is the thoughtful placement, not necessarily careful. I mean, of course it's careful because I want straight lines and everything, but thoughtful placement, as they do in their food arrangements, on their plate, on the table, in their ikebana, in their architecture, in their indoor environments. It's a thoughtful placement, and that's a key component here. So that's how this all came about, and I didn't realize I was merging these three things until the work progressed, and I had some pieces done, and as it went on, the meaning became clear. I didn't have a concept in mind for each piece as I started it. So I thought I should talk about the work now a little bit. The first one I wanted to point out was Stormy Weather, with this kind of subdued palette, and this is the one piece where I didn't use straight geometric, because there's like an applique, I call it, because that's what they call it in quilting. There's an image or an object that's appliqued onto the background, in this case, into the collaged background. And this piece, Stormy Weather, it evolved. I didn't have anything in mind at first, but I realized it was kind of stormy colors. And the applique piece, or this collaged piece in the upper corner, it looks to me like, there's something serious here. And it could be related to emotions, where stormy weather is something happening in a person's life or my life. That's what I thought it was at first. But as I lived with the piece, and after everything was done, I realized it could mean more. Like, there's this patchwork aspect to it, like quilting. It also could be like, as they said in the old days, a bird's eye view. Now they would call it a drone view, looking down over the patchwork farmland of Pennsylvania. And this, perhaps, I say perhaps, sadness of this image up here with the tear, it's that farmland is being decimated, gone from development, and also with the climate change and the crops being not able to grow like they have for generations. It could be a sadness about that, but there's this light pink area that could reference hope. And also in this image up here, there's a little cherry and a star, which they kind of reference, growth and hope. And the star to me is a reference to the cosmos and the unknown, or you could say God or spirit, whatever you like. And that's a common component in Southwest weaving motifs, and also in Japanese cultural items, I would say, the connection to nature. But when I started to see this piece in that regard, I thought about this piece called Garden in Hokkaido. I didn't realize till after the piece was done that it was these colors, excuse me, these colors were the same colors I saw in a vlog from Hokkaido. This adult gentleman was filming his mother, who was a landscape gardener, the evolution of her garden in Hokkaido through the winter and all the seasons. And the family lived in separate houses in the same plot of land. There was one house that was blue and one house that was this beautiful, had this color in the roof. And so this was really, I didn't know it, but it turns out it's somewhat of a drone view of that garden in Hokkaido. And these patterns I created on the paper when I painted it all way before I made these, reminds me somewhat of plant life or something like that. And so anyway, this piece, that stormy weather, reminded me of the garden in Hokkaido, because I was thinking of gardens and growth. And then I was thinking about this piece My Sky, Your River. There was a cyclist in Japan, and it was on a show called Cycling Around Japan. And I don't remember what region it was, but toward the end of the show, he was cycling and he came up and he saw this incredible color, and he got off his bike and looked, and it was a river. And he said to the audience, "I wish you could see the color of this river. It's incredible." And they were showing the color of, and it was this interesting sort of teal turquoise color that I've never seen in a river. So after this piece was done, I realized, oh, I had stuck that in there, and it has these bands that are similar to some Navajo weavings. And it got me thinking about, I called it My Sky, Your River, because, you know, when we look at this, I was thinking about how First Nations and indigenous Americans both have been, you know, put on reservations, forced onto reservations a long time ago. And I was also thinking about the Colorado River and thinking about ownership of landscape and the earth and sky and rivers. And, you know, is this my sky that I'm seeing? Do you see my sky? Is that your river you want me to look at? I don't know. It just, all these ideas popped into my head. So these kind of meanings came to me after the work was done, and I looked at it all together. And these titles of these pieces, if you come in to see the work, they're not incidental. They're important to help understand what my subconscious was doing and how we can relate to the work. But not all the pieces are all seriousness and everything. But this piece, My Sky, Your River, made me think about this piece, Shrine of the Pollinators, because I'm very interested in Shintoism and the shrines in Japan. And I see this piece, it made me think of the pollinators and the difficulty of the pollinators in this world, you know, the bees and the butterflies and such. And I was thinking, you know, they really need a shrine for pollinators. And the shrines in Japan have the entryways, the torii. And I was seeing this center as the torii to enter the shrine of the pollinators, and to think about these pollinators and perhaps send out good energy to them or pray for them or whatever it compels us to do, or we can just look at it and enjoy the work. And the other less serious piece is Green Folly, and it does have the bands that I like in the Navajo graphics and also in quilting. But this pattern that I painted on this paper, I had such a great time painting that pattern, and I love it so much. So I just decided to put a more lighthearted, keep the lighthearted piece in, and I called it Green Folly. And I think that's all I have to say.